Glad you can make it today. I'm Mickey and you're listening to the Obsession Report. Let's talk about things that keep us up at night. In a good way, of course. So, for today's report, we are talking about Ace Attorney, and more specifically, the Miles Edgeworth Investigation series. Yes! The Investigations collection includes both Investigations 1 and Investigations 2, which has not been released in English officially ever before, so this is a very big deal. And it was released on 6th September. I have been waiting for Investigations 2 specifically to be released in English for the longest time. I played Investigations 1 back when it was still on the DS, and I enjoyed it quite a lot actually. Playing as Miles Edgeworth was pretty amazing since he is so charming, and the fact that you had a character that you could control and work with was pretty mind-blowing for Ace Attorney standards. Investigations 2, however, didn't have an official translation because Investigations 1 unfortunately did not sell very well in English. So I played with the fan translation patch back when they released that. I have to admit that I will probably miss the fan translation names, but it being officially translated is way more beneficial for the series. So if I somehow mention fan translation names in this episode, I will try to correct myself. But yeah, just letting you know that I first played the fan translation, so those names are what I have the most association with. If you haven't played Ace Attorney before, I'm interested in knowing your thoughts as well. Have you heard of the Ace Attorney series before? And if you have, did you learn about it from the memes or from other recommendations? Let me know. Let's start with what Ace Attorney even is to begin with. So Ace Attorney is a visual novel murder mystery video game franchise developed by Capcom and has a pretty interesting premise. The player takes on the role of various defense attorneys throughout the series to investigate cases and defend their clients in court. This includes finding the real culprit, even though usually as lawyers we don't actually have to find the real killer, but just try and get your client off scot-free or as low a sentence as possible, but whatever. This game's main aim is not realism, it's fun. So in court, you will find the truth by cross-examining witnesses and finding contradictions in their testimonies using the evidence that you found during the investigation phase. Usually, for some reason, all these witnesses will be lying both intentionally or unintentionally, since you wouldn't have much gameplay in court if they weren't. In Investigations, however, you play as Miles Edgeworth, a popular prosecutor among the Ace Attorney fandom. Unlike all its other sister games, you don't actually have gameplay in the courtroom. As Miles Edgeworth, you investigate crime scenes, collect clues, deduce and find contradictions between your findings and your reasonings, and of course, logic. There is a running joke in the Ace Attorney fandom that every character you play as has some sort of special power that helps them find the truth. So when you play as Phoenix Wright, you have the power to see secrets that a person wants to hide as locks and chains on a person's heart. And when you play as Apollo Justice, the second defense attorney, you have the power to perceive nervous habits with his innate power of good eyesight somehow. Or if you play as Athena Sykes, the third defense attorney that you get introduced to, she has sensitive ears that can hear the emotions in people's speech. Meanwhile, Edgeworth just uses his logic and can solve the cases as effectively, and some may argue even more efficiently than all of them with all these special powers. If you're a fan of well-written murder mystery video games, I suggest you to give Ace Attorney a try. Even though Investigations take place after the original trilogy on the timeline, you could technically start with Investigations as well. Each video game is mostly standalone, even though in the grand timeline there is an order. So let's move on to why I like it, and this is also the section with spoilers. So if you haven't played it before, I suggest go and buy the collection on whatever modern platform that you play your games on. Play it for yourself, then you can come and join me and talk about this. Just have fun with this. So, as mentioned earlier, Ace Attorney is pretty unique and iconic compared to any other video game series of its genre. Whatever video game community you go to, I am sure that you will find at least a reference to Ace Attorney, especially with the iconic objection that everyone knows about. Even people who have not played Ace Attorney know about that meme. That is how iconic this series is. Not only that, can you actually think of another video game series that takes place in a courtroom? I can't think of many games with that setting. Most games that you can think of probably gained inspiration from Ace Attorney and was made after it as well. Even comparing it to other visual novels, Ace Attorney stands out among them because of the unique gameplay of cross-examining witnesses and finding contradictions. Now, if you have played all the Ace Attorney main series games, why should you play Investigations? Well, other than the fact that you play as the Miles Edgeworth, you also have an equivalent of the courtroom gameplay in it as well. You still have to confront witnesses or relevant people and interrogate them on their knowledge of the case and find contradictions that arise from it. While it sounds a little bit mundane on paper, when you are the one who has to use your brain and point out all these contradictions, you get such a satisfying feeling from it and moving closer to the truth. So let's move on to the first point, why I like the series so much. Number one is that the mysteries and the cases are well written. What makes or breaks a mysteries game or any piece of fiction is the writing. To be a compelling mystery game, the mysteries themselves need to be interesting, entertaining, and also fun to figure out. Ace Attorney, and more specifically, Investigations, has that. So let's just jump right in. Let's talk about specific cases that blew my mind. Most of these cases come from Investigations 2, since I feel that the writing is much better than Investigations 1. But there are some moments in Investigations 1 that was pretty good as well. I remember when I first played Investigations 2, the thing that blew my mind the most is when it was revealed that Simon Keyes, or in the official localization, his name is Simeon Saint, was the true mastermind all along. You meet him and you defend him from false charges in case 2, thinking that he's definitely too wimpy to commit any crime. But little did everyone know that it was a facade. Wow. Not only that, everything is so interconnected with each other, and I can't really think of any loopholes. All his schemes made sense, and the game actually foreshadows it way beforehand. I also felt that the game managed to subvert our expectations a lot. In past Ace Attorney games, each mystery was more or less standalone, with a few exceptions such as Trials and Tribulations with, Mia's backstory and how it links to Phoenix and stuff, but even in that game, Case 2 and Case 3 were mostly standalone. Not in Investigations 2 though. Everything was connected. Let me break it down for you. In Case 1, you solve the mystery of an assassination attempt on the president of another country. His name is Dijun Wang. And it is during this case where you meet his bodyguards Knight and Rook, as well as see his true colors. So Wang was always seen as someone who was very strong and very courageous in the face of danger, but through this case it turns out that he is a coward, real coward. The second case takes place in a prison where Knight, so one of the bodyguards of the president, he got murdered in there. So by investigating this case, you realize that the prison warden, Fifi Lagarde, was the true murderer, not Simeon Saint, who Edgeworth was defending from. Her motive was never made known to us by then, but the game did hint that there was some sort of connection between the two of them. You don't really learn what that connection is until the very end of the game, but let's just move on to case 3 first before we reach that. In the third case, you play as Gregory Edgeworth, Miles Edgeworth's father. While this case seems disconnected from the first 2 cases at the beginning, its connection is actually seen after the last case. This case is very much connected to the first Ace Attorney game though, where Von Karma, so Edgeworth's prosecutor mentor, received his first and only penalty in his career. This case was where Gregory reported Von Karma, which led to him murdering Gregory and, the stuff that happened in the first game. In the fourth case, Kay, So Kay Faraday, she's one of the new characters introduced in the investigation series. She loses her memory and you try and solve the mystery of who murdered one of the members of the PIC. It stands for Prosecutor something. I don't know, Prosecutor Ice Cream maybe. Through this case, Miles realized that the person who gave Von Karma his penalty was actually the murderer. And finally, in the last case, all the remaining threads come together. You realize that the president from the first case is in fact a body double and that the actual president was assassinated over 12 years ago in a case that was orchestrated by the prison warden in case 2, Fifi Lagarde, the prosecutor that gave Von Karma his penalty, his Blaze the Best, or in the official localization his name is now Excelsius Winner, and the body double as well. However, there was an eyewitness to his murder, and this eyewitness is Simeon Saint. He orchestrated all the cases that occurred in the present for investigations 2, and it was revealed that he was the son of the culprit of the third case. So as you can see, everything is connected. This whole game, every single case is connected, which is why I love the writing of the investigations game, especially the second game very much. The first game was also interconnected, but instead of having this grand conspiracy and scheme, it was more of like a smuggling ring and following the great thief Yatagarasu, which is kind of like this Robin Hood kind of character. Yeah. I would say the first game's writing wasn't very good compared to the second game, but honestly, it's worth playing the first game just for the second game. That's how good the second game is. The first game does give you context, so it's very important to play the first game. Don't just jump into the second game. One of the reasons why Investigations 2 felt much more solid in terms of writing compared to Investigations 1 in my opinion is because not only are all the cases connected to one central overarching mystery, all the cases also involve our main characters as well as their own character development. So for example, in case 3, we get to play as Edgeworth's father and investigate his last case before he was murdered by Von Karma as mentioned. We get to see how Gregory operates, how he impacted his then apprentice. I know him as Raymond Shields, but his official name is Eddie Fender, and how he in turn impacted Miles when he continues where his father left off in the case after he died. In Investigations 1, there wasn't much character development for our main characters. While we were introduced to new characters like Kay Faraday, returning characters like Miles Edgeworth and Gumshoe didn't really change much from the original trilogy. On the bright side though, being able to hear Miles' inner monologue and learning what happens in between AA4 and AA5 in the main series was pretty interesting. The new detective as well, Detective Bad, was introduced as a sort of mentor figure to Gumshoe, and the introduction of an Interpol agent, Shi Long Lang, also brought about interesting dynamics between the characters. In Investigations 2, however, that's where we get to learn more about the characters and how they have developed. So let's just start with Miles Edgeworth. Miles was already a fan favourite, which is why he got his own spin-off games to begin with. However, in Investigations 2, we get to learn much more about his relationship with his father and how his death impacted him. We also learn Edgeworth's motivation and determination in seeking out the truth, so much so that he was willing to give up his prosecutor's badge in order to find the truth. His resolve to become and stay as a prosecutor was never tested to this extent, so seeing how he was willing to give everything up for the truth showed how much Phoenix had impacted him as well. In the first game, all he cared about was guilty verdicts and a perfect track record. However, after meeting Phoenix and getting saved by him, he changed and realized that the truth is what being in law is all about. So seeing how far Phoenix's impact on Miles' goals in this game comes full circle. It's so good. Gumshoe on the other hand started out as this incompetent detective meant to be the comic relief, and for most of Investigations 1 he remained that way. However, in Investigations 2 he really stepped up to becoming someone Miles can truly rely on. He was always with Miles in every investigation he conducts, even when he loses his prosecutor's badge and the status that comes with it. So Miles can't dock his pay anymore, but he still stays with him. While we knew that Gumshoe was very loyal to Edgeworth already from the original trilogy and Investigations 1, it is in Investigations 2 where his loyalty was truly being tested. And he is very loyal. Investigations 2 proved that he is very loyal. Not only that, he is no longer incompetent. He helps Miles come to realizations in his own investigations and also helps him in certain dire situations such as a hostage kidnapping situation, I wouldn't say where, helping Kay gain her memories back in Case 4 and helping to uncover the huge conspiracy of Case 5. So yes, Gumshoe actually being good at his job. Kay was also expanded on from Investigations 1. While we knew that she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps and become a great thief, as mentioned, the great thief Yatagarasu, we didn't really know much else about her. So I mentioned how the great thief is sort of like a Robin Hood type vigilante, but instead of dealing with money, they deal with information because we're in the information age, right? Investigations 2, however, we explore her relationship with her father while slowly helping her gain her memories back. We learn about why she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps to begin with. We get to explore who Kay truly is since she became a blank slate in Case 4, and helping her get back onto her feet even while Miles loses his prosecutor's badge. It was very touching. Another notable character, I know him as Sebastian the Best, but in the official localization his name is Eustace Winner. He is an Investigations 2 exclusive character, so he doesn't appear in the first Investigations game, and his character develops so much over the course of a single game. He first starts out as this incompetent, constantly being babied kind of prosecutor, and constantly butts head with Miles. He always believed that he was the best, pun definitely not intended, and idolized his father, who was the chief prosecutor and the head of the PIC, Excelsior's Winner. I still don't know what PIC stands for. Prosecutors, Inquisition Council, I don't know, something like that. Something important. However, in Case 4, he had to come to terms about how his father isn't actually as amazing as he thought, and that his father had always thought that Eustace was dumb, which is why he bribed the head of his law academy to give him perfect grades when he actually didn't even do that well in. However, it was Miles that saw his potential as a prosecutor despite giving up his own badge, so Miles isn't even a prosecutor anymore at this stage. He supported Eustace, and because of his mentorship, Eustace could finally stand up to his father and his berating comments and provided the evidence in order to lock his father away in prison for good. Seeing him grow from being this annoying brat to gaining confidence and fulfilling his potential to become a true prosecutor was not only satisfying, but also very good writing. The music in Ace Attorney is also very iconic and catchy. I'm sure everyone has heard the very iconic Pursuit theme. Even if you haven't played the game before, I'm sure you have watched many YouTubers use this music in their videos before. Again, showing how iconic Ace Attorney truly is. Out of all the Investigations games, Investigations 2 soundtrack is in my top 3 alongside the Professor Layton crossover. Just like my other episodes, you have been listening to the music in the background already. Not only does it give an air of mystery, but its own pursuit theme really hypes you up to solve the mystery and pursue the killer. Just listen to these 2 tracks for a bit. The first track really amps up the kind of sinister air about the mystery, while the second track really makes you pumped up to find the truth and catch the killer. The soundtrack also includes character themes for each character you meet, so just listen to these two and you'll be able to tell the character for each. The first theme is for the character Verity Gavel, and her character is this kind of upright judge who takes no nonsense from anyone. And the second theme is for Eddie Fender, a defense attorney if you can't tell from the name. He likes to make a lot of jokes and clown around a lot. He's kind of like this guy who likes to clown around. So even just from these two tracks, you can already tell their character. You haven't even met them or you haven't even seen how they look like, but you can really kind of piece together their personality. There are so many more interesting tracks in the game soundtrack, and I've only scratched the surface of it. I'm quite a music nerd, so when I hear a good video game soundtrack, I'm always excited to share it with others, which is why I'm talking about it today. So Ace Attorney is one of my first video game series that I started playing back in the early 2010s. And the investigation series is one of my favorite installments of the series. If you've played Ace Attorney before, which is your favorite installment? There are quite a few, so even in the main series you have 6 games to choose from. Then you have the 2 investigations games, you have the 2 Great Ace Attorney Chronicles games, and you also have the Layton Phoenix Wright crossover. Yeah, I count that as an Ace Attorney game as well. So if you played it before, which is your favorite installment? I'm interested to know. Also, just a tiny little update. Recently, Persona 3 Reload episode I is released, and I am planning to make an episode about Persona 3 as well. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts about Persona 3, or if you're wondering whether to get into P3, stay tuned. So that's it for today. Bye everyone, and see you 2 weeks from now for Persona 3 episode I guess.